Hi, my name's Joshua Dowling and you're watching the Watercraft Journal. We're coming to you today from Brisbane, the capital of the state of Queensland in Australia, between the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast. And we're here to test a very special jet ski, the Kawasaki STX 310. You heard that right, STX 310. The guys at Kspeed have taken the supercharged engine from the Ultra and put it in this little guy. We've been watching the build for months and we are super excited to ride this ski today.
Don't adjust your screen or get your eyes checked. The 310 and supercharged decals that you see on this 2020 Kawasaki STX 310LX have not been applied incorrectly. The guys at Kspeed in Australia have created what many Kawasaki fans have been craving, a supercharged engine in the new 2020 STX platform. It's what you might say the jet ski equivalent of fitting a Formula 1 engine in a tiny Toyota Yaris hatchback, and the result is just as mind-boggling as you might imagine. And we'll get to what it's like to ride it shortly, but first, how did we get here? While this build is only a concept for now, the Kawasaki STX 310LX bolts together using mostly genuine off-the-shelf parts. That means it wouldn't be too difficult for Kawasaki to build this if they really wanted to. The Kawasaki STX 310LX is the creation of Jamie Eade, who operates one of Australia's biggest Kawasaki dealerships and is also the man behind Kspeed. Before he entered the world of personal watercraft, he had 2 decades of experience as a fuel injection specialist and dyno tuner, working specifically in motorsports. It wasn't long after he began selling new Kawasaki jet skis off the showroom floor that he thought of a way to quickly plug a hole in what he perceived was a gap in the market. After tinkering with turbocharging, he quickly established the easiest way to make the Kawasaki STX rip, and that was to use as many genuine parts as possible. Mind you, this Kawasaki STX 310LX is not his first attempt at squeezing a lot of power into the brand's entry-level hull. A few years ago, Jamie ended up with an old STX 15F and an Ultra 250X, both of which were traded in for small change. And that's when he got the idea to take a supercharged 1.5-liter 250 horsepower Kawasaki engine out of an old battered and bruised Ultra and fit it into the STX 15F hull. Jamie explains, "We just did it as a bit of fun at first, during a quiet winter, just to see if it'd work. The guys in the workshop used it for a while as a bit of a weekend thrasher, but eventually it was junk for scrap." When the redesigned Kawasaki STX 160 came out for 2020, the guys at Kspeed thought it would be a good time to revisit that idea again. This time, no expense was spared, and Kawasaki Australia also contributed to the project. Kspeed bought a brand new Kawasaki STX 160LX, one of the first imported into Australia, and an Ultra 310 crate engine out of the US, that is minus the supercharger. Kawasaki Australia helped out with the brand new supercharger, intercooler, and wiring harness. Kawasaki also kindly supplied the trim, cruise control buttons, and their handlebar housings, as well as the digital instrument display from the Ultra 310. Surprisingly, there were very few items that needed to be made from scratch. Kspeed had to machine a new pump shoe so that they could use the 160mm jet pump from the Ultra, as the STX has the smaller 148mm jet pump. Jamie explains, "I didn't want to drive 310 horsepower through the STX's jet pump, so that was a must." To make the pump shoe, Kspeed initially welded a larger ring onto the STX pump shoe and then machined it down to the correct size. Jamie continues, "If the factory were to do this, they would of course just tool the part, but it's definitely within the realms of possibility and not super expensive to make." The factory engine mounts are a carryover, and the engine bolts straight to the STX 160's engine location. However, Kspeed's real genius was how they routed the exhaust. They fitted the exhaust, muffler, and rubber exhaust hose from the older Kawasaki Ultra 300 because the model's exhaust outlet is on the same side as the exhaust outlet for the STX 160. The airbox is out of a Kawasaki Ultra 260, and as Jamie says, it all clicked into place. Jamie explains that Kawasaki has all the tooling for this stuff and access to these parts already. I had to make a hose from the supercharger to the airbox, just two 90-degree bends. I also had to shorten the Ultra 260 bracket to suit the STX hull for the Ultra 260 airbox, cut the middle out of it, welded it back together, and it fit. Once that was done, it all fit together perfectly. Kspeed's hope is that by demonstrating what is possible using genuine Kawasaki parts, that the bigwigs in the US and Japan might take the idea a little further and consider putting a supercharged STX into production. Jamie admits, "I love the Ultra platform and I love the nimbleness of the STX platform, but to me, the STX just needs a bit more power. Even in naturally aspirated form, I wish it had 200 horsepower, that would be nice. You might say I've taken it to extremes with the 310 engine, but all this is possible." If such a creation were to be built by the factory, Kspeed reckons a supercharged STX would line up nicely alongside the Yamaha GP 1800R SVHO or the Sea-Doo RX PX 300, both mid-size supercharged models popular with racers and thrill seekers. The top speed recorded by Kspeed on this beast was a staggering 80 miles per hour, that is, of course, with the factory-fitted speed governor removed. We had planned on attempting to match this speed, or at least wind it out as best as we could. However, the choppy conditions during our test ride quickly evaporated that idea. Instead, we focused on its balance, handling, and how it launched. And holy smoke, does this thing launch! It cavitated the first couple times that we pulled full throttle from a standstill. It initially struggled for grip as it fought to grab enough water to pump it through without interruption. But that was because we had the trim turned all the way up. In a flatter setting, it launched a lot more cleanly and ate the chop with ease. Once the STX 310LX got going, it felt like there was no stopping it. Sure, it hops around a little bit in the chop, because of course it's a shorter and lighter hull than the Ultra. And to be frank, this thing will really put hairs on your chest in rough conditions. We're not afraid to say it almost had too much power on tap, especially for novice riders. Incidentally, we noticed the accelerator trigger on the Kawasaki is a little further out than it is on the Yamaha or Sea-Doo. This makes it more difficult to modulate your speed with a spare finger or two, tucked between the trigger and the handlebar, particularly in really bumpy conditions. Hair trigger aside, the agility of the STX hull cannot be understated. It's truly a gem, even in its naturally aspirated form, even though this hull design has been around since 2004. While the top deck had a major overhaul late last year, when the model was renamed STX 160, everything below the bond line has been unchanged for almost 2 decades. But as the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're big fans of this hull and its engine, in its standard guise, and it's a great mid-level performance jet ski, and ideal for first-timers who would likely appreciate its low-speed agility, ample storage, and class-leading 20.6-gallon fuel tank. With practice, the STX 160 can turn quite easily on its own axes. It's a good confidence builder and a very predictable ride. With 310 horsepower on hand, however, it commands respect and elicits a healthy dose of fear. Macho types in the jet ski community might be dismissive of so much grunt in such a small package, but we're here to testify that this thing demands your full attention. Which bears the question, is 310 horsepower too much for the STX? In a novice's hands, yeah, probably. But in experienced hands, it really feels like the sky's the limit with this machine. As far as Kspeed is concerned, the STX 310LX is a no-brainer. Jamie concludes, "I'd like to say that Kawasaki should, and frankly, they just need to build this. This is something that customers are asking about and really want. We have a hole in our lineup against the Yamaha GP 1800R and the Sea-Doo RX PX 300, and this would slot in there quite nicely and give the other two brands something else to chase for a change." I'm Kevin Shaw, and thanks for watching the Watercraft Journal. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. It definitely does help. And if you want to read more about this jet ski or others, please visit www.watercraftjournal.com, where new articles are published Monday through Friday, entirely free to you.